Thank you, Foyed, for having me on this platform and for giving me the liberty to talk about something that is very, very dear to my heart. And even bigger, thank you to all the designers on my panel for humoring this whimsical fancy. This panel, honestly, is a little extra special to me because, unlike other panels that we've been a part of, this actually has all of my friends on it. It's people who I've grown to know over the years and grown to admire, not only for the fabulous work that they do, but also for the people who they are. So when Poet approached me to moderate a panel, my immediate thought was to do it on something I live, not love, but live. Something I eat, something I breathe, something I sleep, something that lives in my conscious and subconscious all the time, which is honestly all things design. It's in everything around us. It's from the buildings we occupy to their signages. It's from the interiors of these spaces to the furniture or products that they occupy. It's from the food we eat, the clothes we wear, and of course, the shoes we pride to possess. This discussion would be incomplete if I didn't touch upon Sanjay's fabulous passion for shoes and his drool-worthy collection, which I'm so envious of. But that aside, to me, what this group honestly represents is energy and passion for all things design. The realization that it can't exist in isolation and needs influences for it to thrive. We have here a lineup of designers, each accomplished and recognized in their field, who will talk about what they do and how they do it in an attempt to tie together the various influences that design holds with them. So without me chattering on anymore, I hold this open for Sanjay to start his. We'll do a short presentation with each designer, at the end of which I will ask a couple of questions. And once the round of 6 designers is complete, we'll hold the floor open for more questions from the audience. Thank you, Sanjay.
And this is on a 35-acre parcel located in Jaisalmer amidst sand dunes. Now, very importantly, the first thing to decide is how do you want to create this entire layout. So, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Jaisalmer is Rajasthan, arches, stone, traditional architecture. But then at the same time, this is Jaisalmer. Jaisalmer is the part of Rajasthan which has the maximum desert in its landscape. So, thinking about the desert, one thinks that maybe one could do something very organic and based on the sand dunes that Jaisalmer is famous for. So, in our initial layout, what we've done is just simply worked out, it's a very, very small sketch on 1:1000, where you've seen that, because it's a large layout, you are able to probably make the whole design within ground plus one. And then what if one was to start doing the rooms in a very organic village kind of arrangement here towards the north of the side, have something focal in the center which would become the main activity space, which would include maybe the spa and the recreation spaces. And then have the public zone of the hotel, which would house the banqueting, the staff quarters, the main restaurant, lobby and bar areas, which is somewhere towards the southern side, and the parking would all be again on the southern side based on this. And maybe you just have a perimeter road on the entire side so that everything is vehicle free. So this is like a resort hotel. So we started with this, and then this was the sketch that finally translates into creating this whole organic layout where all of these are rooms. And to even get this to scale, one simply has to make some small sketches to see how you'll be able to fit 6 to 8 rooms together. What is the kind of size that you get? Maybe it's about 36 meters long, considering that it's 4 meters, 2 meters for each toilet space. So you have about 36 meters to house 6 rooms together. This could be ground plus 1. And then based on that, this is a 2-scale sketch on 1:1000, showing a perimeter road, showing this whole organic layout of all these rooms, showing a spa and recreation space which becomes a focal point at the center, and then the main lobby restaurant where one enters, goes away and creates all parking spaces towards the rear, and you have accommodation for the staff towards the south of the plot. And based on this, then one designs the details of the structure. So it started off like this with this initial sketch which shows that everything is designed like a sand dune, like a series of sand dunes, and it's very, very organic in nature. Now, let's say we are doing a standalone banqueting room. The banqueting spaces would be to house about 3 to 400 people. So based on that, you need about a 36 meter by 18-meter banquet hall. Maybe it has a division in the middle. And then, like all banquet halls, you need to have a large pre-function space when you enter. And then, because this site is the way it is, unlike most banquets in multi-story hotels, this one you can allow it to open up to the outside and orient it so that this is the north, and you have a lot of seating areas here, and this is facing the main garden. And then on the sides, because you're creating this whole dune shaped space, this is the volume that is the highest, the main hall. And then you have the kitchen and all the staff lockers towards the sides, storerooms, so that this gradually comes down and you are able to do something like this. And then banquets are largely used for marriages, so a bride and a groom room here with toilets towards the side. So this part becomes the zone where public go, this part becomes the zone where staff go. So there's a clear demarcation based on how a hotel and a banqueting functions. And then this is the kind of volume that you get with an eccentric cut where you enter. So this is the kind of scale that the banquet would have, just like a dune. And then the kitchen spaces and all form in another curve emerging from this and then going down. And then maybe the ancillary spaces on the side also do that, but on a different scale. So now this simple structure is created with a series of curves that echo the sand dunes, and that's how it would generally look. So to summarize, this is very quickly done. You base the concept based on the location, on the kind of site that you have, and then with the function and the form both acting together throughout the entire process, created these series of spaces. So the rooms form different series of curves, and at a different location the banquet room forms this different series of curves, and similarly the restaurant and the bar and the cafeteria and all the other facilities also go along with that flow. So eventually this will be a very organic layout echoing the sand dunes of the Jaisalmer desert.
And I'm so glad you did it with your sketches, because it's something that is so characteristic of you, and it's not something that many can pull off. For me, honestly, I think it was a trip down memory lane. It was almost like presenting a design dissertation for architecture school, spoken with the same amount of passion as a student, coupled with years of knowledge and expertise. It has just such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Um, so in your explanation of the project, context, of course, has immense relevance. The fact that your building is in a desert, using topography of the land and then zoning spaces comes naturally. How important is the section of the building, the overall cross section, and then the individual wall section for you to go back and forth between section and plan to make the spaces work? If you could just elaborate on that.
Oh yeah. So see, the layout is the main thing which you start with, and then immediately you go into how you're actually encapsulating those spaces. So it's all about section and plan together, along with what it's going to look like in 3D. So it's all happening simultaneously. So you do something in the section, you realize you add that in the plan, or you do something in the plan and you go back to the section. So it's all happening simultaneously. It's not one step by one step, which is, I guess, the way it works for everyone. Because it's the plan, it's the section, it's the 3D all together and all changing together.
Okay. Okay. Also, there's a large diversity in the body of work that you've done over the years. And you did stress in your presentation on form and function, which are the two apexes of architectural design. However, I think the way you said it was it in terms of having equal weightage, not that one follows the other. You know how different principles have different things following the other. How do you derive these forms, especially on sites which don't have such a strong context?
So actually, yeah, that's very valid point. So in this case, yeah, there is a strong context, or anywhere you do something, work in Rajasthan is generally a strong context. But like, let's say doing some work in Bombay, in a part that is not part of valid estate, because that's the only part that has any context. The rest of it, really speaking, doesn't have any. So then you have to derive your own ones. But then the context sometimes comes from the surroundings itself. As to, are the surroundings very busy and do you want to block that out? Or do you want your building to be able to view that? Is the surrounding so good that you want it to view it? Or do you want to create your own enclosures? So sometimes it's that governs it. So it'll always be an aspect that comes from the site in some way. It's not necessarily an element which is tradition or modern. It is about responding to that site. If you got a view and the view is in a certain direction, then obviously the entire plan and all of that is going to try and enhance that. And if you have nothing, then you have to try and make it within your site. So it stems from that, and then you go about it in different ways.
Right. Almost like making a signature statement if there's actually no context, making that the context to take it away from.
Yes.
Okay. So this is another, it's a comment on a lifestyle thing, but so the grapevine has it that you don't waste your time on a flight snoozing, which I am hugely guilty of. The end of any flight results in voluminous sketches of the next big idea or the next great project. Now that we've been stuck, and I know that you haven't been able to take a flight, which you are taking sometime this week, um, which you haven't taken in the last 7 months. How have you managed to keep things up and running? I mean, there is work across the state, across state boundaries for you. How has it been? How is, just monitoring it remotely been?
Yeah, so the monitoring is actually a huge challenge right now, because there are actually projects that have come in during the COVID period and have started on site. So luckily there are associates, just one of them who has already had COVID and was able to go to all those sites. So this is what it
The
is.
martyr.
So right now, every client is calling us, so you have to go. So you'll have to take
Right.
that chance and go, and you're starting now from this weekend onwards.
True. Thankfully, you have a flight tomorrow, and that's why you made it to this panel.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we please have Iram next? Iram, over to you.
Thank you, Ekta. Thank you, Shraddha, and thank you, Foyd, for asking me to be part of this panel. I love the people on the panel. So I think that's part of my love for design, and I think Ekta said it beautifully. I believe that design, like Ekta, I believe design is everywhere. And I think for me, the motto is if you love something, it'll work. That's the only rule. So I was very inspired to hear Sanjay talk about form and function being equally important, because I think that plays a really important role. Sometimes I want something that's just really pretty. I like beautiful things. They don't always have to be functional, I confess. Can I see the next slide, please? Thank you. So I want to talk about some incredible people whose designs have always inspired me, and they may not necessarily be from the industry that we practice in. I don't know how many of you know Carolyn Davidson, but she was the lady who created the iconic Nike logo. The goddess of victory was actually encapsulated by another goddess of design, Carolyn Davidson. This swoosh is her trademark, which was drawn for the princely sum of $35. Just imagine that. This incredible woman who drew this. And I think I really enjoy parts of graphic design and typography immensely. So the next slide, please. There's another woman whose work I love called Astrid Stavro, who works on typography, which you can see on the screen, which is a form I am hugely inspired by. I think it's very graphic. I think it plays with scale. I think it comes into my work in many, many different ways. And one of the ways that I suddenly realized while talking to Ekta that I hadn't been able to connect was, if you see the next slide, please, can I see the next slide? Was this design that we created recently for another a biennale, a design biennale, where we were all asked to create a product or a space. And I wanted to talk about a product which was syncretic and used the culture of our particular region or our country. And so I created these products using typography. If you see the next image also, which is a close-up, can I go to the next slide, please? You will notice that this is a product which has typography as its main design theme. It's made in cast, hand-oiled and rubbed bronze, but it's inlaid in silver with typography in Hindi and Urdu, and it's a little container for food. So it talks about noshtan, which is what you call a container for food in UP, which is what I was referring to, Uttar Pradesh. And I use text and graphics as my main design language to really bring this to life. All of this comes from the work of these incredible women like Carolyn Davidson or Astrid Stavro, or even the calligraphy that we see across our country. Can I go to the next slide, please? And then there are influences from the world of fashion, and I am not a fashionable person. I am not Sanjay Puri or Ekta Parekh, but I try. And I think for me, simplicity is truly the key. And less is always more, as Coco Chanel said. And I love this crisp outline of black on a white base is something that always, somewhere or the other, I think makes its way into every project that I do. Can I see the next slide, please? So this is a space we created for Baxter, which is an Italian furniture brand, and they wanted to showcase their products. And we wanted to create a space that spoke about their products, but did not want it to be typical or did not want it to be very, very over the top. And you can see my love for black and white and Coco Chanel key lines just coming through. If you see the next image, please. And again, you see the crispness, the line that I'm talking about, that one single black line that runs through that outline. I love using a single defining line, and I suddenly look at these and I think, okay, that's where it's all coming from. So if you see the handle, there's one crisp little handle in the corner on the door, which is black. The moldings are just the outline defining my entire panel. Can we go to the next slide, please? Eileen Ray is an architect who I have always deeply, deeply admired, and I think she wasn't given the recognition that she should have got. There was a retrospective done a couple of years ago that I was fortunate enough to see, and I love what she spoke about. I love the fact that she always wanted to push the boundaries. I love how she thought. And when she said a house is not a machine to live in, it's the shell of man, his extension, his release, the emotion in her thinking is what I absolutely relate to. Can I see the next slide, please? I believe that every space has an emotion, and that emotional context is my client. So I think context is created in many ways, and design without context is incomplete. This is an office that we designed, completely contextual, driven by the fact that everything that you see here reflects the client in unusual ways. It's a pharmaceutical office. The form is completely client-driven again. What are the two most common things that you see in pharma? Two common products, a pill and a capsule. So you see the arched forms that take that and continue throughout the entire space. We also picked up a little bit of their logo. So the motif that you see, the pattern that you see on the floor is derived from their logo. We want the client to be the context in our spaces, and therefore Eileen's statement about the house not just being a machine but actually having this emotion, which to my mind is always related with the person inhabiting it, therefore my client, is very, very important and means a lot to me. The next slide, please. And then here are some designs and designers that I absolutely love. There is Ekta Parekh's powder room, which is so beautifully detailed. Fluting, which is something I love, she loves, but that clever cotton steel bathroom, I love. Sanjay Puri, I want this staircase. Please, either someone make me a house or someone be rich enough to buy me a staircase and a house like this. I mean, the staircase I drool over. Matteo, I'm a big, big fan. Um, I was very fortunate enough to be able to get this piece for one of my projects. Next slide, please. Baarish, I stalk you. I stalk your work online, but I would love to do more with you. Bunai, you know how much I love Bunai. Anjali, I have called you and gushed over it in no uncertain terms. Payal, me with no fashion sense, if I can see this and love it, I mean, seriously. So thank you so much. The amazing people on this panel. I think there's design, like Ekta said, everywhere. And everywhere you look, I'm going to take something away and be enriched for it. So thank you very, very much. Mr. Puri,
Thank
are you
you,
building
Iram.
me that staircase? Where am I getting that staircase? Thank
It
you.
was
So
amazing.
I'm absolutely honored for my bathroom being on the same page as Sanjay's staircase, I have
I
to say.
know. But then what you do with Sanjay's staircase, and then you talk to Sanjay and you say, Sanjay, can I see the layout of your house? Because he puts this facade up, which is so beautiful. And I'm writing to him on Insta like a little stalker saying, post the layout also na. Sanjay saying, thank you, and ignoring that part. I want to see the layout. See, show floor plan, Sanjay, show floor plan. Let us learn.
Oh man, true that, true
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I think, Iram, honestly, I think your first quote hit the nail on the head. If you love it, it will work.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you'll just put the right amount of energy to make it happen, right? And that's what it's about. It's about passion. Um, I've had the pleasure of knowing you and your work for a while now,
Likewise.
and
Likewise.
and we've had long, unending discussions on one of our main pet peeves, at least the one I'm allowed to discuss on this platform, and that is the love of art. Not only the obvious physicality of it, but more the narrative behind it. We're big fans of the story behind how it works and how it all comes together. Have you ever identified a particular work for a project before actually conceptualizing what the space is going to be like? Maybe out of client interaction, client personality. I don't know. Could you elaborate on that, maybe?
Yeah, so thank you for making me spill my guts. Hopefully, no client is going to watch this and know how bonkers I am about art to know that I have looked at a piece and then been so besotted that I have conceptualized an entire room around the piece. I had just signed on a new home, and Julien Segard had his opening at Experimenter. I love Julien's work.
Yes.
And I think you and I spoke about it. There was this beautiful work called The Night or The Dawn, The Breaking Dawn. Yeah, yeah, which was this absolutely exquisite 12 feet long folded fabric work. And I had just signed on this amazing client who was extremely trusting. God bless her. And I just said to her that I think this room will benefit immensely from this art. I had not thought of the room for a second, I confess. The artwork was the centerpiece because ultimately you have a story coming together, right? She wanted to be dramatic. She wanted a room that quote unquote was sexy. I mean, black, okay, dramatic, sexy, that killed it at every nail, at just sort of every little context that she wanted. But I hadn't even thought of the room till I saw that piece of art. And it's not very often that it happens to me, it just happens sometimes. But it's also about the client, right? There'll be people who will have art that they've collected, and there'll be some who have none, and we love building collections for them. But I can't imagine a home without art, or actually any space without art. It's soulless for me. So, yes, I confess I have done these things. And thank you for making me confess on a public platform. I really appreciate it, Ekta. Yeah, thank you.
It's true. It's at least so. I have to ask you, did your client buy that work? Because I've had my eyes on it, and you know that.
We're nearly done. We're nearly done
Oh,
concluding that transaction. But if I don't, please get it. I actually want to break down my house behind me and find a new wall to hang that work. But my husband might divorce me. So I'm in a bit of a quandary. Divorce or artwork? I haven't decided what I want more.
well, there are days and there are days.
Exactly. I
Um,
hope Parekh or
I
Samir
want
are
to.
not watching this.
I want to touch upon another thing which is very you. It could be your middle name, and that is collaboration. I think you're somebody who swears by it, gives credit where it's due, encourages platforms to enhance the end user experience. I think it'll be really interesting for you to talk about that one collaboration because you have so many that you've done, which actually, touches a chord and has left a lasting impression, and maybe why.
So I really believe in collaboration. I think I'm the eternal student, and every time that you work with another person, you learn. You feed off each other. You don't only live in your own echo chamber, because the truth is, at the end of the day, our studios become our little echo chambers at some level because we're not getting another fresh input. We run our studios, they listen, they hear from us, and then that's a circular space that you're enclosed in. But the minute you talk to, I can talk to anybody on the panel, or you talk to Sanjay or you or Matteo or Anjali, I'm stepping outside my usual zone of thinking, and I'm getting into a space where I will learn. So for me, all my collaborations have been that. And I think I love working with Rushad. He's a very, very dear friend, but he's also so gifted that it's an immense joy to work with him. There is Clove, who have gone beyond their comfort level to work and tweak and change their products. And that's been amazing to do, because I think that's where everybody's boundaries get stretched, and then new dimensions are found for everyone. There are little ceramic studios like Zikwa. I loved collaborating with Orvi because they were willing to work on forms like molded plaster, which nobody was willing to encourage with me because it's tedious and it's painful. It also is enriching when you work with somebody like Ayush Kasliwal, because you learn about new crafts that you haven't heard of but are actually dying, they're not new. So I can go on, the list is endless, and I don't think I can really pick one. But most importantly, I hope these are long-time collaborations that take on a different life with every new project. I'm working with Clove again on a completely different way to use glass. And I think that's the idea. I'd like to combine different materials, and I think this is going to be the way I want to work as long as I'm working. I think it's the only way for us to grow, or for my work to grow, or for me to learn. And I love collaborations. I hope we all get to collaborate sometime together in different ways. Like I'd love to do that staircase one day. Mr. Puri? The bathrooms are mine, Ekta. But thank you. I mean, honestly, everyone on this panel, it'll be amazing to do something together.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Iram, for being as soulful as always.
Thank you.
And Matteo, can we have your presentation next? Because it's going to be fun and insane at the same time.
Sorry, I was mute. Thank you very much for inviting me. You know that I really love India, and I'm really feeling part of the Indian design community, which is a very warm family. I come to India quite often, and I really feel at home with you guys. So today I'm gonna show you two small projects that I did in the last year. There are two very different projects. One is about a collaboration I did with a Michelin star chef here in Vicenza, in my hometown. It was a temporary, let's say, show performance experience that you can experience, and there is a little video that will show it. So if you can just show the video.
And everywhere, watchful eyes. Visiting the starred restaurant El Koch is like a journey to an unknown world. It's inspired by early explorers of the Tierra del Fuego archipelago in South America, who described bizarre creatures and flesh-eating plants. Designer Matteo Cibic drew on those descriptions when he redesigned his friend Lorenzo Cogo's gourmet restaurant.
I wanted to commemorate the discovery of Tierra del Fuego 500 years ago and to create a timeless...
It's also a serving trolley.
The horse is part of the fantastic animal world populating the space. It brings us to our journey's goal. It's our Trojan horse. It will take us on our next adventure.
The restaurant is located on the piazza here in Vicenza in northern Italy. The decor used to be minimalistic. Now El Coq has become a city attraction, thanks to Matteo Cibic. He founded his own design studio in 2006 at the age of just 23. He describes his style as luxury fun. He designs furniture, carpets, and accessories, but his specialty is ceramic objects.
This vase is full of holes. It has no function, like 99.9% of all vases.
The 37-year-old loves ceramics because the medium allows him to create such wondrous objects. Like the ironically kitsch hermaphrodites in his living room. His favorite piece is called Donkey, an animal with human features.
He represents a somewhat carefree vision of the world. It's a desire to have magical animals accompany us through life, whispering wise words to us and making difficult times easier.
Matteo Cibic calls these ceramics plants of the future. They're said to emit fragrances, another design gimmick to stimulate the imagination of the diners.
I think most restaurants focus too much on the food. If you want to have a true experience these days, you have to pay attention to the details, hearing, smelling, and seeing, as well as tasting.
In Lorenzo Cogo's restaurant, dinner can last 1, 2, or 3 hours. A gong in this vase marks time. Guests only have to decide on the duration. The chef decides what goes on the table.
Guests shouldn't have to worry. They should feel comfortable like they do at home. Then they can relax and enjoy the journey. Even those like Matteo who aren't dressed very well are welcome.
And where do you put flowers when all your vases are full of holes? Simple. Just take a shoe, a sock, and a water bottle and create a new vase, a genuine Cibic.
So as you could see, I really like to work with people that likes to experiment in different fields. And I like to work with people that design with fun and try to push the boundaries in different fields. So from cuisine to design to production of different materials. So in the next video, we're gonna see another project, which is called Moon Room. That's for a company, an Italian company that sell in US and Asia. The project is called Moon Room because I like to design a capsule room for the moon. So the stereotype room on the moon is a very minimalistic, super clean, very sad somehow. So my idea was to create a room that was bring all the stuff and all the materials that we are not gonna get on the moon and we will not find in the moon. So the smells, all the human touch that is gonna be hard to find there. So leathers, woods, and hand knotted rugs. So we can just start having looking at the video and then I'll explain more. I am Matteo Cibic, Italian designer and transmedia artist. My work is about creating luxury, fun experience. Moorroom offers multiple spaces with a style and color palette that I like to define as futuristic ethnic vintage. It's about an innovative mix of warm and cold materials and glossy and matte surfaces, a real journey into the future. Wood, leather, ceramic, and hand-woven threads are highly valued materials that cannot be reproduced on the moon. Their smells, organic matrix, and irregular textures will help us to keep the memories of the Earth alive. Humanity will soon be facing long journeys into space and be able to spend time on the moon alone or with friends. This is the Moorroom collection.
Thank you, Matteo. That was so totally cool. The perfect mix of fun, fantasy, laced with large doses of rigorous detail. My first question to you is, where can I get that Cibic original shoe, sock, and plastic bottle vase? I want one of those original ones for my house.
Yeah, that's pretty close to you. You can find it in Kolkata from Ashish and Suma. So,
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
I have one 5 meters from me here, but I think it's a bit far away from me.
Okay, so there are two very obviously different products in both your videos, and I'm really glad that you decided to show the versatility of your mind. I think my question stems from, what is the influence behind the choice of form between those two languages? How much is the end user responsible for the direction the idea takes?
You know, when my work, my design work is about creating connection with people and having fun with them. So to me, design is a tool to get in touch with people, give work to people, and create an experience of wonder. So that's what I do and what I like to do. And every project has a different narrative. I do project as a narrative. So they are a way to create a narrative, to create a story in a way that people get closer to this object and will probably keep it for longer, and they will remember the story about them. So my work is more about creating a storytelling. Here you saw two different storytelling, one about the restaurant, which is closely connected to Mr. Pigafetta that 500 years ago left Vicenza, this small town in Veneto, to actually discover that, prove that the world was round. So he just went all the way. Like to live in the moon in the future. Would I ever spend, after being in lockdown for 8 months, would you ever spend like 1 year, 2 years with your friends in a very white box as Stanley Kubrick design, and as everyone is pushing to see the space exploration. So most of the work come out from some very basic and stupid question, and it's like what I would do, why someone is doing that. So let's experience. If you see, one of my projects is called Vaso Naso, that is vase nose in English. So I was very intrigued in how certain people can do for a long time still life painting. So there are people that do it for decades, other people that do it for the entire life. So I concentrate myself that I'm quite hyperactive for 1 year to do just one vase every day, designing it, producing it for 365 days. And after 1 year, I discovered that somehow vases, pottery can have a soul. They are sort of personas. Putting them together, just putting a little extrusion, a little something, they turn into people. And just putting them side by side, they create connection. They become like actors. So every year I do this kind of research, and these are part of them. This year, as you know, I was telling you the last time we met in January at the last party we did all together in Delhi. My plan for this year was how not to travel for 1 year and have an international business without traveling by flight, in order to create a new etiquette on how to deal with digital meeting. And without knowing it, after 1 month, the entire world follow my experience, and as you can see, it works perfectly, or at least nearly perfectly.
Do you have a magic wand that made it happen? Your experiment into reality?
Not a good magic, but
Not good magic.
His
Yes.
genie is sitting next to him. You see him in the frame, right?
That's
Yeah.
I'll let you
Okay, I
know
have one more.
project just in case you can get ready for the next catastrophe.
I'm afraid to have my next conversation with you. Okay, I have one more question. In India, like you said, you have two very different collaborations. One is with Scarlet Splendor, where you're designing furniture, lights, in a very different language. And the other is with Jaipur Rugs, where you've done beautifully hand-knotted carpets.
Yeah.
Two very different companies, two varied ideologies. Could you elaborate a little bit about the choice of design principle you used with both of them, and what made you take on the varied direction that you did?
Well, I work only with people that I like. I first met 5 years ago Ashish and Suman, and Ashish started collecting me. He first commissioned a piece for his house, and we became big friends. And somehow, as you can see throughout my work, every work for each company is completely different. You can see a red line between them, connecting them, but I create a narrative and a collection, a right story around the people that I'm connected with. So Suman and Ashish are very pop. To me, I mean, they introduced me to a very pop India that I was never existing, because we have a very we are not seeing a lot of India from Europe. And so the first time they took me to India, I was really shocked about how it is the place to be today, from music to design to art. And I wanted to show to the world how India has incredible potential and is the place to be. So it was somehow a way to to show to the world incredible potential in production, but as well in an heritage and a grammar into design and visual. So how to create pop visual from India and export it worldwide, creating sort of Indian international style. That then in Italy might creating the first collection, which is called Vanilla Noir, looks like a bit timeless, but in a way that could be done 200 years ago, but even in 100 years, in Mexico they think it's Mexican, in Italy they think it's Italian, and in India, Indian. So to me was interesting to find some touching point that were connecting all the facade of Italian architecture in Florence, in Pompeii, and so on with the Indian aesthetic. In the other side, when I went to Jaipur, and I didn't know actually what Jaipur was. I never heard about the word Jaipur. I'm very ignorant, and I discovered that fantastic city that was completely pink. I love pink, and was so iconic. That to me was an icon that was very easily exported abroad and to a large mass of people. The architecture, the sundials that are very iconic, can be very easily turned into a rug, are very graphic. You can attach a story to that. And as well the stepwells, as the mucho guys. So I wanted to, through a Wunderkammer, that's why it's called the Jaipur Wunderkammer, that collection, to create a storytelling around India, around Jaipur, and in Europe, a lot of people get into that because it's a kind of it's like writing a book through looking at the rugs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Matteo, for that. Anjali, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm actually honored to be on a panel of such heavy lifters. And like Ekta said, it's so nice to know that, we're all friends. And I'm actually very excited about this discussion. I had something very specific to share with all of you today. It was a recent project that I did, for Decode, where I was asked to interpret my expression and interpretation of what a modern Maharaja was. And as a design practice, it's funny, but we always start with form and function and practicality. And so this was a nice segue away from the practical aspect of life, where one could really just play and explore and enjoy and just love design for everything that it is. So I'll just share my screen. So my focus for this project was called the Mad Hatter's Ball. And the idea behind the entire project was looking at what a modern Maharaja was and seeing him for a man that led a dual life, a life of opulence, a life of unnecessary grandeur, and always living a life, one for his people and one for himself. And the life that he lives for himself is one filled with, exuberance, joy, and a constant state of play. What I started doing when I looked at this idea and this theme was looking at the past and finding a way to celebrate it in the present. And I looked at a lot of designers, but the ones that I landed on were the two that you see on the screen. The one on the left is a jewelry designer. Most of you might know him. His name is Viren Bhagat. He's absolutely insanely talented and finds really beautiful way of celebrating Mughal architecture, Mughal influences, design, identity, language, and really abstracting it in a way that has a hint to the past, but is very much celebrated in the present. And the one on the left was an Israeli product designer that I found through my research called Tal Batit, which also looked at a very futuristic, modern, playful, kind of hyper realistic design aspect. And again, contrasted with this, very ancient, kind of celebrated past. And what I liked about these two were that, I could draw inspiration from how to interpret what a modern Maharaja was, but celebrate the man that he is today and everything that he's exposed to today. And so I started looking at how I could take something very basic, something that every Maharaja has, and I can take, as a for granted kind of assumption. And that was massive amounts of jewelry and old jewels that, have been collected through ancestors and heirlooms. And I looked at these brooches and forms and tried to pull aspects of them that I could bring into my pieces. And pieces that sometimes you could find similarities in if you were to contrast them in this way. But my thought was to move away from the origin and to move it so far into abstraction, where the story itself kind of bound it between where it came from and where it is now. So what you will see in front of you are these really whimsical forms, forms that kind of celebrate a state of play, an exaggeration of color, an exaggeration of shapes. But the one thing that binds all of them is this secretness, that's kind of hidden within each of them. And these are a set of cabinets for the exhibition, where there are these hidden vaults that lie within them, where if you press a button, a drawer opens, or if you see this form that's kind of filled with these curves and these balls, there is one knob that opens the cabinet. So there are only a lucky few that get to know what's really within. And I feel that there's a certain kind of mystery and play within that reality of the experience of the product. And that's what really fascinated me about how we interpreted this brief. The second one was actually a collaboration that we did with a friend of mine. They run an architectural practice called Morph Lab in Mumbai. And we try to look at ancient words and memories. And, I think Iram mentioned in her presentation that, there's so much inspiration that comes from calligraphy. There's so much inspiration that comes from the graphic aspect of things. And Baarish will kind of be the one that moves into that in a deeper way. But I think for us in this collaboration, we were very interested in Nask, which is a very old calligraphy rooted in an Urdu script. And what we found in each of these reference points is that while they've obviously been interpreted by other artists and designers, like you see on the screen, there was one very constant form that kept resonating with us, which was a very strong line based on which all these curls and arcs and forms sat on. It was a strong, rigid, horizontal line. And so while we started experimenting and seeing what we could do with this, we found that this horizontal line kind of bound everything, and everything that moved around it was held together with the weight of this rigidness. And because Sahil comes from a space of parametry, and he uses technology to a very, very large extent in his projects. It was nice because our studio is as analog as it gets. We're one of those old school studios that first start with pen to paper and keep going at it and keep going at it, and then go into prototyping and experimentation. So it was really nice trying to find this balance, between just running wild, playing with what we could do, and using this software called Grasshopper to really play with the forms of things. And what emerged was something really beautiful, something that can change with time. And while it is super modern and very expressive in a current context, the story binds it to where it came from, where you have this calligraphy that kind of moves along this very rigid line. And I was telling Ekta when I was explaining this to her, earlier, that the aim is that while this is something that comes from the past, we wanted to use technology to kind of bring it into the future. And so the idea is that when someone moves past this chandelier, the lights move with the movement of that person. And so each dome kind of lights up and dims as people move past it and through it. And I think that's what really excites us about this piece, that it's ever dynamic, even though it comes from, a really kind of rich heritage. So I think for me, the love of design is just being able to play and not being answerable to anyone for it. I think all of us do it. And there are those few moments where you actually get to do exactly what you want, and you found someone that just lets you run wild. And there's this magic that comes in the middle of that, And I think what I just showed you is kind of design for design's sake. There is no end client. It was truly a pure act of just genuine design expression. And I did run a little wild with it, as you can see. But I think that's what kind of keeps us all going, this utter love for design that's just undeniable. It wakes us up in the morning. It keeps us going on those horrible, horrible days. And there's just joy in that.
Thank you, Anjali. I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. That was absolutely lovely. I loved how you touched upon the duality of life, because honestly, that's what it is. The idea that not even a Maharaja's life is without layers that need to be peeled away. Life as we know it is a fine act of balance. And depending on which side of the coin you're looking at, it has two faces in the least. So my question sort of stems from there. My question to you is, how do you, as a young entrepreneur and the force behind Josmo, juggle this fine art of balance? What are the hidden strategies that you may take on work that you may not necessarily want to do but need to, while still trying to find that pleasure in pain?
So it's an active struggle, but it's one that I signed up for life. I think very honestly, I see every learning as an experience, realizing that if I equip myself with this now, when I'm thrown into the deep end, when something like this happens again, I'm better equipped. Um, there's one thing that I do very seriously is I take feedback very, very seriously. And I try to incorporate things, almost immediately into a process or a behavior or a project or the way something is done. I try, like a modern Maharaja, to remain magnanimous in decisions, and kind of take a larger role in the business. But I won't lie, my real joy lies in being on the ground, kind of burning the night oil.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me is that I forgive, but I rarely forget. And I think that applies to myself as well. I rarely forget the mistakes that I've made. I really take those mistakes very seriously, and I try to find solutions for them. Sometimes even when they've not happened, and try to put preventive measures in place. So I think overall that's what I do, and because I run a factory, but I'm also client facing. There really is a duality that I live, because uh, you know um, you get to enjoy certain things in an external view, but when you're at the factory, you have to be very real and very down to earth. And I try to be real in both senses, so that there isn't an internal conflict for me. So I'm very open with my team. I don't sugarcoat things for a client or someone in the studio. So I try to bridge that balance between the hard work at the back end of actually running a factory, and you know presenting the final product and myself to a client. So it's um it's not hard anymore, let me put it that way. After these years, I found a way to strike a balance between it. And I think a big part of it is kind of building a culture from within, um, of realizing that everyone is equal, everyone has a voice, everything is collaborative in the studio. Like Iram said, she just hit the nail on the head. So I think these are the ways I try.
I think I've taken my notes that you forgive but don't forget. Note to self. um, but I think it's lovely to see also the influences of typography in your work. I mean, I'm a big fan, and and I speak about this all the time, about loving it. And through the light that you've designed, I mean, you can see the translation of that graphic text and font and its influence in the form of a light. Um, Honestly, I believe that we're global citizens, and then boundaries between places are simply lines in the sand now more than ever, because almost everything other than physical touch is possible virtually. Do you think that varied cultural differences influence you to design, and do those translate into more graphical interpretations? And if yes, can you please share an example or maybe an experience?
So I think what you saw right now is a very big example of what we do on a regular basis. I think we're very inspired by color from different cultures. It comes through in every collection some way or the other. I think what fascinates me is that, we could all take the same theme and interpret it in a completely different manner. And I think within India itself, there's so many different cultures that come together. I'm so inspired by that on a regular basis. And I think other designers that I've been studying right now have been inspiring me constantly. I've been looking at different materiality of things. Um, I've become a bit obsessed with biomimicry and biomaterials, and seeing how people interpret that in a very modernized, kind of contemporary manner. I wouldn't necessarily say that graphics and culture come through in a very obvious way in my work. It's very, very abstracted. Um, and I think what inspires me is the storytelling aspect of it. I like understanding the stories of how other people interpret things, their collections, and then it comes through into the story that we weave into our pieces. So I think it's unknowingly something that resonates. You wouldn't be able to tell that, okay, this is where the idea started and this is where the product has arrived, because it goes through so many iterations over time that that link is, it becomes very faint, and what keeps it together is the story that we bind with it. So I'm a big storyteller. So everything is bound by a story.
which I feel like is the common theme which is arriving from this discussion, quite honestly, because there is a narrative behind everything, and that's how it should be. Um, all right. I guess we have Payal up next. Can we have your presentation, Payal?
So before the presentation, has it started?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So before the video is shown, I just wanted to kind of say that, honestly, like everybody's kind of spoken about one particular project, and what we kind of did really quickly, Ekta asked me to do this like a few days back, and really quickly we put together a bunch of collections, to give an overview of how we kind of start, from how we start and how we end. So once the video is shown, I'll kind of take you guys through it, because it's really like in fast forward motion almost, like what Anjali and Matteo and all did is I kind of slowly take you around, slowly took us through the inspiration. In this case, it's really like, as fashion is really fast, it's a very quick clip into the whole thing. So once we see it, I'll just touch upon it to explain it.
Sounds good.
To Indian skin tones, are these embroideries something which someone will is pleasing to the eye, because I love storytelling as much as all of you, but I've also realized that sometimes like we are talking, just preaching to the choir, like we're just talking to ourselves as designers, but the end user doesn't really give a shit. It's like they want to look at it and be like, oh, it's a pretty outfit or it's not a pretty outfit. So you have to keep all that in mind, and really those are the same elements of design or principles of design, which is for any aspect of design that you keep in mind. So like eventually, like if, I know the most fun I had was for my PS20 show, which I did show a little bit in the video, which was basically my 20th anniversary show at Lakme Fashion Week, where I was like, there are no rules, I'm not going to care about saleability, things that I've had to unlearn over the 20 years of, because everything I had to learn and unlearn, because, eventually all the rules are broken when you have a client sitting in front of you who is from a conservative, I'm Marwadi, so I'm not putting in conservative Marwadi family, saying that, oh, I know my neckline needs to be here and I can't do backless. And, so there's no real principle there. So you have to kind of put that into the like a little box. So at the PS20 show, I had no limitations, no. So I went all out. I put salwars under lehengas. I put backless cholis. I took leather and slapped it on into zardozi. I did wool zardozi with wool. I mean, I just did not stop, and I enjoyed that process so much that I felt like the real parameters only were texture, color, silhouette. And if I had to design for no one in mind in particular, these would be the three things that I would, keep in mind.
Okay. And I have one more question, which sort of ties in our last speaker, because I know you have collaborated with a bunch of graphic designers on various collections. I, in fact, own one of those beautiful garments. Can you tell us about that process, how the synergy between two designers has worked for you?
So, of course, we've collaborated with some amazing graphic designers, graphic artists, and it's a beautiful experience. And I'm going to elaborate on that. And we also collaborate a lot because we do a lot of collaborations under the Payal Singhal umbrella with a lot of other product designers. So, like in terms of we've done accessories, hairbands, shoes, wallpapers. So I think it's the same rule. First of all, Matteo said, I only work with people I love. And I agree with that completely. I was nodding my head away because I think when you talk about design synergy, there has to be a kind of a energy which gels and merges for a product to come out. If you're feeling angst or you're not feeling happy or that vibe and energy is not there, I don't think you can create something. When you collaborate, the fireworks that happen. I think two design heads are better than one always. When I feel very isolated actually when I'm designing just for the Payal Singhal brand because it's usually me leading a team. But when I'm collaborative, like when we're talking about graphic design, like as you mentioned, and like Ekta and I have a common friend who's done my first print, Nasha, where it was such a, I had never done prints before. It was the first time. She's a graphic designer. I went to her and I said, this is around 2010. I said, Nasha, I want to get into prints and why don't you and I collaborate? And the storytelling that we had between each other, in fact, we tried to do something completely from scratch. And then I went back to one of her works and I said, I like this. Can we change the proportion? Can we, it was like this tiny a motif and we made it into like 2 feet big and it was multicolored. It had purple, orange, I remember pink in it. And we made it into just black. Yeah, black and rose pink, and it blew up on the runway. So we've had some beautiful collaborations with Arya Nerkar from Nicobar Good Earth, with Megha Purnatar. We currently just did an amazing print called Cafe Morocco with Pari Purohit of Glyph Designs, and I genuinely love the process. We basically, if a designer is generous and giving, you can really draw magic from each other. I think it's a time when you become when designers are guarded or selfish is when real collaborations can't happen. So I really think when two designers come together, it's like two brains working from two different points of view on the same subject, and you get to see things from a different point of view, which like I said, talking about that motif, like she saw it as a small note card and I saw it as a giant piece of fabric. So, it's very, very, exciting. And I think some of the best work that I have done in my career has come out of collaborations.
Thank you, Payal. You've really spoken with a lot of passion. So don't tell me you're not a public speaker anymore. And we have Baarish up next. Thank you, Baarish, for your patience. But we can have your presentation next.
So what this, there's really nothing left much for me to add. Feeling like a pony amongst these thoroughbreds and a derby happening. All of us are always so intrigued, influenced by, masks, toys, tickets, stamps, manual covers, whatnot, sometimes just accidental rusty marks. And I just felt that let's share some of the works. It's about love, it's about logos, it's about passion. So I'm just going to share a few works, and not talk much. Music okay? That was over an identity. This is about creating the wayfinding and signage program completely informed, influenced, and inspired by a large golden dome, the largest in Asia, in Gorai, Mumbai. This is the global Vipassana pagoda, and here Buddhism, spirituality, meditation, all these really informed the kind of language, typography, materials, color combination, the white and the gold of this sign program. We are straddling a wide variety of applications, and that's the intent of uh, you know uh, showing or sharing works, especially after such veterans and masters as Sanjay, Payal, across domains, Iram, Matteo's eccentric stuff, Anjali's you know stuff in furniture, ideas. In today's time and age, spirituality has been also coupled with selfies. And at the same campus, owing to the large demographic of the audience coming in, we have created this mudra, which also serves as a selfie point. And this is not as an afterthought. This is thought through at the point of conception. One more. After this is this sports club designed by Kapadia Associates for this client, Savi Swaraj, especially mentioning the client's name because they said, do what you want. Rare collaborations, but as everybody is stressed on, it's collaborative, it's a collective, and none of this would have happened unless we were given space and there was total trust and faith in what was being done. Because we played with the architecture, the interiors, mnemonics, signs, wayfinding, and eventually all of this coming together into a space which really us as graphic designers, we want to play the role where it is so integrated that the user does not understand um, that at the back end there were multiple teams involved. That's true integration. And what a canvas we got this huge 70 feet height by 270 feet surface that overlooks the an Olympic-sized pool and the athletic track. And after a lot of iterations, we came up with the audience being an appropriate visual that overlooks, cheers, and prods the performers, the sportsmen to do their better and best. At best, I feel us as designers are always trying stuff many times at the client's cost. We are making errors. We are improving on that. We are improvising. And that's what design is about. And there goes the last bit. And finally,
Thank you, Baarish. That was an extremely vivid presentation. It had so much diverse content, almost like a journey of how your mind grapples with client, context, influences. Just brilliant. Um, you're an architect by qualification. In fact, we've done undergrad school together. So I say this with a certain historical bias that you've always had a graphic flair in your hand, right from the time that you sprayed the doors of our studio in college without any guidelines, straight from a spraying can. After all these years, it's left a lasting impression, clearly. My question to you is, how have you dealt with the shift in scale from macro to micro? How have you been able to contain your input to just graphic in a larger design picture?
so we have not been able to really contain our influence on just graphic design. As you can see, one is trying to infect environments. And before I forget that, right now there's a terrific vibe, as Payal mentioned, when two people, two minds come together. So just like a design collaborative sex and design sharex, there is a lot of energy in what is happening right now. So many designers, so many fields, Sanjay, Iram, Matteo, Anjali, Ekta, you, Payal, and us. I think there's a fantastic electrifying energy right now. Having seen so much of work from everybody, there's nothing much to add. Answering back your question, um, one has to put on different lenses, and that's what I think as an architect we are trained to do. And I was lucky to have that education and be kind of mentored by people such as Sen Kapadia, Hema Sankalia, who always prodded us to kind of take a wide angle view of the canvas, of the context, and also taught us the power of collaborative early on. So I think our training built us and created a terrific plinth for us to kind of build onto. Thanks to all of them.
True that. Um, I've told you this when we spoke before, that I simply love this community park project. It shows such a high degree of restraint. It's almost that you chance upon your signage. It's in the form of quotes. It's no obvious notifications. It doesn't tell you the slide is here, the jogging park is there. It's beautiful. It's small, subtle messages. It's something that you take away. Can you elaborate a little bit about the conceptualization of the project, how you actually convinced the client of what we've learned back in architecture school, that less is more?
So, thank you. Thanks to the client, they were an evolved. They were an evolved tribe. Not only the client, but the client's team. We have often tried to intervene into projects and eventually kind of become ghost designers, where what we have done is really indecipherable from the principal architects or the principal designers intent, or their master plan. In this case, we felt that the protagonist was nature and is nature and ought to be, and hence our signs could be partially hidden behind the bush, could be kind of camouflaged by some of the foliage, and why not? Yeah. So once we presented all of this, as I mentioned, because the client was evolved, they saw meaning, they saw the merit, and it was a smooth ride. Therefore, so using that bit, I want to add that it is possible to do meaningful, satisfying work even in the mainstream environment and ecosystem of clients, budgets, and environments. It is still possible.
All right, I think that's a wrap.